Once upon a time, in a peaceful and vibrant village named Okechukwu, there lived a young man named Ogadimma. Ogadimma was known far and wide for his wisdom, which far exceeded his years. He was a man of few words, often seen contemplating the world around him, and his presence brought peace to everyone who met him. But Ogadimma's greatest lesson was one that he would teach the village in a way they would never forget: the power of silence. Okechukwu, like many other villages, was full of life and activity. The villagers were hardworking and always bustling with energy, whether in the fields, in the market, or during community gatherings. But with so many voices and opinions in the air, it wasn't always easy for the villagers to know when to speak and when to stay silent. It was in this environment that Ogadimma's wisdom would soon shine. One warm afternoon, a disagreement broke out at the village market. A group of farmers, led by the influential and fiery Okechukwu, were arguing fiercely about the price of onions and yam tubers. Okechukwu, a man known for his pride and loud voice, was demanding that the price be raised. His reasoning was that the harvest had been plentiful, and thus, the value of the yams had increased. But another farmer, Nana, disagreed, arguing that the harvest was not enough to justify an increase. The tension in the air grew thick, and other villagers gathered to watch the confrontation. As the argument escalated, with each man raising their voice to the other, Ogadimma stood on the edge of the crowd. He had heard the entire exchange, and while others were shouting, he remained silent, observing the situation closely. His calm presence stood in stark contrast to the angry voices filling the air. The village elder, known for his wisdom and authority, had been watching the scene as well. He called for quiet and motioned for the villagers to listen. "This quarrel is growing too loud and too bitter," he said, his voice filled with authority. "We must find a way to resolve it before it divides our people." At this moment, Ogadimma stepped forward, his voice as calm and measured as always. "Elder," he began, addressing the wise leader, "I believe we must take a step back. I have listened carefully, and I have a suggestion." Okechukwu, eager to assert his position, quickly interrupted. "What is there to listen to, Ogadimma? The truth is clear. We must raise the price." But Ogadimma, with his usual quiet confidence, didn't respond to Okechukwu's interruption. Instead, he simply waited. And in that moment of silence, something remarkable happened. The villagers, who had been swept up in the noise of the argument, suddenly became aware of the tension in the air. The energy of the crowd shifted, and they began to pay attention to Ogadimma. "I suggest," Ogadimma continued, his voice steady and unwavering, "that we all take a moment to think before we speak. We must understand the full picture. The harvest was good, yes, but it was not as plentiful as Okechukwu claims. I've spoken with many farmers, and many of them are struggling with pests and drought in certain parts of the land. Raising the price might harm our neighbors who are still recovering from last year's losses." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. "Instead of arguing," Ogadimma said, "we can meet tomorrow, quietly and peacefully, to discuss the matter with the facts in hand. We can learn from each other, and perhaps, we can find a fair price that works for all." For a long moment, there was complete silence. No one spoke. The villagers stood in awe of the calmness and wisdom that Ogadimma had shown. The elder, sensing that Ogadimma had captured the hearts and minds of the people, nodded slowly. "Ogadimma speaks truth," the elder said. "We will listen and reflect before we decide." The crowd began to disperse quietly, and the argument was over. Okechukwu, though still proud, was left with nothing to argue against. He knew Ogadimma's words were wise, and he found himself in a rare moment of reflection. The next day, the farmers of Okechukwu gathered again, but this time with open minds and respectful hearts. They worked together to find a fair price for the yam tubers and onions, one that reflected the true nature of the harvest, while also considering the needs of everyone in the village. From that day on, the villagers of Okechukwu began to realize the importance of knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. They learned that in times of conflict, it was sometimes better to listen and reflect rather than rush to speak. Ogadimma had shown them that silence was not weakness but strength, a way to bring clarity and wisdom in moments of chaos. And so, in the village of Okechukwu, the power of quiet wisdom became a cherished lesson, passed down through generations. Ogadimma, though still a man of few words, became the greatest teacher the village had ever known. His ability to keep quiet when it mattered most helped bring peace to many conflicts, and his story was told for years to come as a reminder that knowing when to keep quiet is one of the greatest virtues a person can possess. Moral of the story. The story of Ogadimma teaches us that knowing when to keep quiet is a powerful virtue. In times of conflict or uncertainty, silence can be more effective than speaking hastily or loudly. It allows us to listen, reflect, and find clarity before responding. When we pause to think rather than react immediately, we open the door to better understanding and peaceful resolution. Silence is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom, and it can bring balance and harmony to even the most tensed situations. And so, the story of Ogadimma, the man who demonstrated the importance of silence, was forever etched into the hearts of the people of Okechukwu.